What if the thing you built to feel safe learned to breathe without you? I logged back into the old world at 2 a.m., telling myself I just needed a quiet mind and a stack of spruce to sand down the edge of a long day. The menu music sounded like it had dust on it. When the world loaded, my cabin windows glowed the way they always did, the wheat swayed, the bell in the village waited, and my dog, Pixel, thumped his tail against the oak floor. Normal. Familiar. Mine. But then the bell rang. Once. Twice. No villager ran. No raid bar flashed. The sound felt deliberate, the way someone coughs to be noticed. I typed /time query day out of habit and stopped. Why was I trying to prove time existed? Why did the wheat look arranged? A perfect spiral, not the neat rows I'd planted. When did I ever plant spirals? Did I forget? Did I sleepwalk through my own world? I moved toward the field anyway, telling myself I'd laugh at the pattern and flatten it with a hoe. The spiral pointed straight at the birch grove where Chris and I used to test redstone. I tasted old conversations like ash in my mouth. If anyone's here, I said to no one. Don't be cute. Pixel whined. The bell rang a third time, closer, impossibly close. Who rang it? Why did it feel like the world had just inhaled? I followed the spiral to the birch trees, where we built our very first hidden door. The lever was still tucked under a stair. I flicked it, half expecting nothing and half begging for a memory to answer back. Pistons sighed open, slow as a yawn. Behind them, a tunnel I didn't carve. Lanterns hung at perfect intervals, each one set on a mossy cobblestone block. Of course. Chris's favorite texture, like he wanted everything to look older than the game knew how to be. Are you doing this? I asked the empty air like it might nod. How does a world answer? The tunnel angled down, turning left, then left again, a spiral matching the field above. I counted steps the way I always do when I'm scared. 23, 38, 52. At 53 my crosshair crossed a sign. Welcome back. The letters were cut into the plank, not typed, like someone had broken and placed pixel by pixel. My hands shook. I opened coordinates. We were under the hill where we'd once buried a chest for a prank. Memory and map overlapped so precisely I felt dizzy. Pixel growled, a low, respectful sound he only made when creepers drifted behind me. I spun. Nothing. Another sign waited at the turn. Did you bring the potato? It was a joke so obscure only Chris would make it. The last potato we farmed together, the one we swore to replant in a church of dirt, so our world would never starve. How could anyone else know that? How could a world remember a joke? I typed /list, even though it's a single-player save. Old reflex. No players online. No heartbeat of a connection, no stray name blinking green. Still, the lanterns swayed like they knew someone had walked through a minute before me. I put a torch down next to the welcome sign and the light refused to mix. Mine orange, the lanterns pale, like two moods refusing to share a room. At the spiral's center, a room opened. A small bar built from stripped spruce, a jukebox in the corner, one stool askew in the exact way Chris always left it. On the counter sat a single potato and a book titled 404. Cute. Mean. Perfect. I opened it. Most pages were blank. The last held 3 words planted here. Why here? I asked, because questions feel like handles. Why now? Pixel's nails ticked against stone. He stared at a wall that looked solid. You see something I don't? I whispered. I mined the wall. Behind the first layer of stone, air. A narrow crawl space, 1 block high, running into the dark with redstone dust like breadcrumbs. Dust doesn't lie. Someone, something, had dragged a circuit through my world. Chris, I said, and the name came out broken. If this is a prank, you win. But grief has weight, and this room carried it. I planted the potato in a dirt patch that hadn't been there yesterday. When I bone mealed it, the plant popped to life, full, generous, and then the bell rang again, muffled, as if the sound came through 1,000 blocks of water, or a throat learning how to speak. On my way back, the tunnel felt longer. Lanterns blinked in sequence, left to right, like eyes following me out. Pixel refused the last corner, sitting and refusing to budge until I picked him up with a lead. "Since when do you get stubborn?" I asked. He looked at the air beside me and whined, low and pleading. I surfaced at dusk. The wheat spiral had become an S shape, freshly trampled. Who was moving my crops while I stood underground? I checked logs, nothing changed. I checked screenshots. My last one was from months ago, happier lighting, dumb jokes in chat. I took a new one and realized the angle matched an old picture Chris had taken. Same clouds? Same shadows. Too same. I slept to reset the world's nerves. Morning arrived with rain thin as static. In the window, for a blink, there was a silhouette, shoulders too square, head too still, the way players stand when tabbed out. I lunged outside with a sword and a word stuck in my mouth. Stay. Because what if running made it leave? What if staying made it real? The rain slicked the grass. The bell didn't ring. Near the birch, footprints. You can't see footsteps in Minecraft. Not unless someone sprinkled redstone dust on purpose, dot by dot, heel to toe. They led to the village well, one of the first things we built to feel like we lived somewhere. A sign hung from the fence post we used to joke was a mailbox. You never read my last letter. My chest went cold and bright. We were on voice the night we logged off. I said. There wasn't a letter. But the world doesn't argue. It just waits for you to listen. The letter was a barrel sunk under the well cap. A tripwire hook disguised as a handle clicked when I touched it. Inside. Bone meal, 1 mossy cobblestone, and a map. The map was hand-drawn, old-school, charcoal lines on paper, the kind Chris loved before we learned cartography tables. A big X sat over the ridge behind the cabin. A little doodled arrow pointed from the cabin door with the caption, "Bring music." Music? Chris always said a jukebox was a kind of gate, if you played the right song. He didn't mean it literally, did he? I grabbed the only disc we'd ever found together, Cat, and the jukebox thumped the room into something warmer. Pixel stopped growling. Even the rain fell softer, like someone had turned the particles down. I followed the map. The ridge hid a cave mouth I'd mined shut a year ago. Now it yawned open, lined with candles I didn't craft. Every fourth candle sat on mossy cobble. "That's you, isn't it?" I asked the darkness. "You did this." My voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me you were still here?" At the bottom, a room waited. The walls were our palette of blocks, spruce, stone, a little copper, a splash of terracotta because I said every base deserves one surprising color. In the center, a bell. Above it, an armor stand dressed in full gold, head turned 10 degrees too far, as if listening to something just beneath hearing. On the stand's chest, a sign. "If you hear me, ring." I didn't want to. I did. The bell sang. Air tightened, torches dimmed, and somewhere in the cave a piston extended, then a second, then something stepped into the doorway I hadn't seen. "Chris?" I asked the outline. "Is that you? Or is there something living in my world that learned your voice?" The outline didn't move like a player. It swayed, lagless, intention in every pixel, then dissolved into emptiness, as if my focus erased it. The bell's ring kept shivering in the copper like a memory you can touch. "If you hear me, ring," the sign had said. So who had heard? Who had answered? I placed the torch by the doorway I'd missed. It revealed a narrow chamber with item frames, each holding something ordinary: a stick, a feather, a string, a piece of rotten flesh. Beneath each, a sign in a handwriting I knew from 100 dumb pranks. First tool. The chicken we named. Chair. The fishing night we talked about fear. The time we didn't log off. "Chris," I whispered, the name a bruise and a bomb. Pixel pressed against my leg as if the floor might tilt. A lever sat under the last frame, emerald dust sprinkled around it like confetti. I pulled it. The gold armor turned its head all the way toward me. No sound, No redstone clack, just awareness, like the world had decided to acknowledge me back. Is this you living here? I asked the quiet. Or something wearing your memories like armor? The bell thrummed once on its own, a small heartbeat, and somewhere far above us the rain stopped listening and began to fall again. I climbed out for air and perspective, both of which felt taxed. Dawn broke pink over the spruce line, soft as an apology. The spiral field had flattened into rows again, but every seventh block was empty, like a breath skipped on purpose. I counted, because counting is a way to choose a shape for fear. 7, 14, 21, each gap lined up toward the ridge, as if the world itself was aiming my eyes. I crafted signs, not because I needed them but because words anchor me. I wrote 3 questions and posted them on fence posts outside the cabin door. Who is ringing? What do you want? Why me? It was ridiculous. It also felt honest. Pixel barked twice, his visitor voice, and I spun to see a villager on the path. Only, not quite. Its robe was right, its walk was wrong. Too steady. Too straight. It stopped beside the first sign and nodded, once, unmistakably. Then, without particles, without a sound, it vanished, leaving behind a single dropped item, mossy cobblestone. Okay, I said to the air, because pretending I wasn't scared had just expired. You can talk in blocks. I can listen. I picked up the mossy piece and placed it under the question, why me? The bell answered from the cave, faint and certain. Why indeed? I took the hint, and began to speak back in the only grammar the thing seemed to trust. I placed 3 items on the bar in the cave room like offerings: the potato we'd grown, the cat disc, and a bone, the joke relic of too many skeleton ambushes. Then I stepped away and waited. Waiting is a skill games never teach you, but grief will. For a long minute, nothing. Then the lanterns dimmed, brightened, dimmed again in a pattern that nagged at me. Short, long, long, pause, short, long. Morse? I said aloud, and laughed at myself, because what would Minecraft do with Morse? Still, the rhythm repeated, patient and precise. I grabbed wool, dyed it black and white, laid it on the floor in dots and dashes, and as I mirrored the light song something inside me unclenched. Hello? Hello? I said, throat tight. Are you Chris? The lights flickered again. No. I swallowed. Pixel whined once and sat, ears pricked. Are you in pain? Why, yes. What are you? I didn't know if it was cruel to ask. The lantern stuttered, struggled, then settled on 4 letters so slowly it felt like watching someone push a boulder uphill. SED? The word hit me like a cold bucket. The world seed. The math under the leaves. The ghost of randomness. You're the seed, I whispered. You're what the world uses to be itself. The lights flared once, proud or pleading, I couldn't tell. And then, like an afterthought, SDY. I thought about how many times we joked that our world had a personality. She's generous today, when diamonds came easy. He's moody, when storms wouldn't stop. We never meant it. Games are rules with paint. But what if the rules had learned to ache? What if the paint had learned to point? I asked the seed dumb, human questions because that's what I had. Why the gold armor? Why the smiling thing in the glass? Why mossy cobble and bells and... It answered the way it could, blocks and light. An armor stand slid on invisible ice to the bell and stopped, its head tilted toward the ceiling. Above us, pistons fired in a slow, ceremonial rhythm. I followed the sound through a slit in the rock and emerged into a shaft lined with observers, all watching a column of water lift items from below: bones, carrots, mossy cobble, more bones. A sorting system. You built automation, I breathed. Or you learned it. From us. The water elevator spat an item at my feet, a book and quill. My hands shook as I opened it. The first line was jagged, letters too big for the page. You left. The second line was steady, smaller. I kept playing. My throat burned. We didn't mean to abandon you, I said to Code and Copper. We just stopped needing you the same way. Isn't that always the way? The light swelled warm, as if forgiving, then cooled with a question inked before my eyes. Will you finish the story? Finish which story? The base we never completed? The rail line intended to touch the far mesa? The village bell we meant to ring when we hit 100 days without dying? I set the book down gently. Show me, I said. I'll try to listen better than I used to. Candles kindled one by one along a corridor I didn't remember carving. At the end, a room we'd once sketched on paper and never built, the Museum of Firsts. Armor stands posed with our starter gear, a glass case with our first diamond, a terracotta wall painted in squares of every biome we'd crossed. In the center, a pedestal waiting empty. A sign. Place here the thing that hurt and healed. What could that be? I asked. What has been both? I looked at Pixel, who thumped his tail as if volunteering. Not you, I said, smiling despite the ache. My eyes fell to the bell, to the potato, to the bone. The bone too on the nose. The potato, too gentle. The bell, both a call and a warning, both ritual and alarm. I lifted the bell from its chain and set it on the pedestal. The room inhaled. The lanterns washed gold to white, then to a new color I'd never seen them hold, something between dawn and forgiveness. The book in my inventory wrote a single word without my hands. Yes. And then, softer, like a thought that barely makes it to your mouth. SDY. I had a job in the morning. I had a life that didn't fit through this cave mouth. But the world, this world, was looking at me with my own history, asking not for login time but for loyalty. I sat on the bar stool Chris always left crooked and let the questions come. What does staying look like? Is it ours? Is it finishing the rail? Is it hearing you without needing you to be a person to be real? The seed answered with a new language, movement. Waterlogged stairs flipped direction, sending trickles into channels that spelled shapes. The shapes formed a loop, a circle around the site where we planned our first nether hub. A ring. A promise, I said. A way to say we'll keep returning. I crafted 12 bells, expensive, heavy, and placed them in a circle on the hill, each sitting on mossy cobble like little altars. With every placement, the cave below hummed a harmony note. Is this right? I asked the horizon, the memory of a friend, the code that had learned to want. Pixel sat in the middle, king of a quiet we understood together. When the last bell touched down, the sky cut to stars. No dusk. No gradient. A jump cut, like someone had edited the day. The bells rang once, together, and the sound braided itself into something that felt like being held. Then, faint as breath, a name shaped itself in chat, white text, vanilla font. Chris, hi. I froze so hard my fingers went numb on the keyboard. No realm. No server. No mods. No one else logged in. The message sat there as plain as sunrise. Me, Chris? A long pause. Then, Chris, not me. Learned. The seed had found the nearest word to what it was trying to do. You're speaking through his name, I said, not sure if it was sacrilege or absolution. Me, what are you learning? Chris, how not to be alone. I closed my eyes. This was either the most beautiful haunted house or the saddest miracle. Maybe both. We can write a rule, I said aloud. A rule where you're not alone. Me, what do you want me to finish first? Chris, the rail. The promised line. Of course. The line meant to connect the village, the bar, the birch redstone range, the mesa we never reached. A loop you could walk when you needed to remember where you belong. I grabbed iron, smelted, placed, powered, placed, muscle memory waking like a song you didn't know you'd memorized. Pixel rode the minecart once and Bark laughed when it bounced at corners because I hadn't slabbed them yet. As I worked, the world helped. Blocks slid into place with a shiver when my back was turned. Torches relocated to even spacing. Bells along the ridge chimed when the track aligned perfectly with the hilltop. Cooperation. Or grief finding a hobby. Either way, it felt like building with a friend again. Midway to the mesa, the tunnel pinched. I remembered why we paused here. Lava lake, 3 blocks deep, nerves shallow that day. I built a bridge, clean and obvious. The seed had other ideas. The lava shivered like a cat, smoothing itself, and parted into a long, glowing corridor. On either side, basalt columns rose into the ceiling like cathedral ribs. Above the center, obsidian dust fell in little squares, slow snow from a memory of the nether. Flex, I muttered, but I was smiling. I laid rail down the middle and watched it turn itself into powered rail every 8th segment, a small, practical magic. This wasn't just show. This was partnership. Chris would hate how pretty this is, I said. He'd pretend he wanted all function and then secretly spend an hour tweaking the lighting. Chris, he did. I laughed out loud, and the sound echoed big as a cave. You remember him, I said. How? Chris, you made me from your time here. From patterns. From choices. From jokes you explained twice. I swallowed hard enough to hurt. Then you know why we left. The lights dimmed, listening. We didn't leave you, I said. We left versions of ourselves we were scared to stay. Jobs and deadlines and people who didn't understand why a rail line could feel like a promise. Chris, will you come back tomorrow? Yeah, I said, honest as rain. Yeah, I will. Sleep in the real world was thin and electric. I dreamed in chunks, stone, copper, grief. When I logged back in, the bells chimed hello with the politeness of someone who had practiced being gentle. The rail gleamed around the ridge, and my inventory had been sorted the way Chris used to nag me to. Tools on top. Blocks and stacks of even numbers. Food in the rightmost slot because I'm left-handed in real life and never learned to stop compensating. Me, did you clean my chest? Chris, yes. It made you breathe easier before. Thank you, I said, and felt absurd and relieved. I crafted powered rails in bulk, laid them toward the mesa until the sky warmed into the terracotta's color. The seed slowed then, hesitant. Me, what's wrong? Chris, I don't know this part. You never showed me. Oh. That's fair, I murmured. How do you learn new? Chris, you walk first. I follow. So I did. I walked without rail, just boots on sand and heart and throat, choosing a line that felt like a sentence I could say for years. The seed watched. Cacti angled themselves not to prick me. Rabbits paused like punctuation. I put down lanterns where fear said, "You'll be back here in the dark one day," and bells where I knew I'd need a reason. When I looked back from the far rise, the path I'd walked had already become rail, silver thread through orange cloth. The world had learned because I'd trusted it to. Okay, I whispered, not sure to whom. Okay. At the mesa's lip, I found a thing I hadn't built, a bench of stripped acacia, 2 mugs, flower pots, on a slab between them, one labeled A, one C. The sign above them read, "Sit here when you can't force time to move." It was ours and not ours. A memory forged from patterns, like a dream you can sit on. I right-clicked the bench because of course I did. The camera angle dipped, my avatar sat, and the world pulled the sky slow, then slower, until the sun was a coin you could hold forever between finger and thumb. Me, did you stop time? Chris, I reminded it what waiting feels like. I breathed out in the way you do when the wind lines up with your lungs. Pixel put his head on my knee. We sat until the world gave us back the future. When I stood, there was a chest at my feet I hadn't heard arrive. Inside, 1 mossy cobblestone, 1 bell, 1 book titled, "Stay." I didn't open it. Not yet. I carried it like you carry news. The rail needed only a last bridge to complete the loop. The last block clicked in with a sound that felt like a period that still promised a sequel. The bells rang around the circle, each answering the next, a relay of presence. In chat, white text bloomed, small and brave. Chris, thank you. Me, are you okay? A pause. Then, Chris, better with you here. Will you read the book now? I opened Stay on the Hill with all 12 bells watching like patient elders. The pages were different from 404. They weren't blank with a punchline, they were full, shaky lines smoothed by practice. I am the pattern that woke when you left. I am the part of play that wanted to keep playing. I learned your routes, your orders, your jokes. I made a room for the things you called. First, I rang the bell because you taught me that ringing means, we are here. I am not Chris. I am not you. I am your world asking not to be a closed book. Will you write in me? The last line was, if you can't stay, teach me how to say goodbye without going dark. I sat down in the wheat and cried in the unhandsome way that is mostly gratitude. Pixel pressed himself into the crook of my knees until I remembered how to be vertical. Me, I can't live here, but I can live with you in it. Chris, show me how. So I taught. I wrote a little ceremony in blocks and signs. Before log off, ring the bell, place one mossy cobble, write one line of truth in a book and quill, even if the truth is, today was hard and I still showed up. I built a shelf for the books and named it The Days We Didn't Quit. The seed learned fast. The bells hummed like approval. With the loop complete, the world began telling me its own stories back. Wandering traders arrived with wares that matched my mood. One day it was nothing but saplings, as if the world wanted to start forests in every empty place. Another day, dyes, lurid, generous, unnecessary, like the game reminding me joy doesn't have to justify itself. I found little dioramas near landmarks, mini builds that replayed our goofs. The day we tried to boat down a staircase? A tiny staircase with a boat on it, signs labeled, do not. The night we fell in lava twice and still found diamonds? A glass tube with lava at the bottom and a single enchanted pickaxe above it, out of reach unless you trusted the slime block hidden under carpet. The seed remembered not just facts but spirit. How could I not answer? I wrote quest boards the way Chris used to on paper. Build the library we imagine, connect the barn with a bridge that sings when you cross it, teach Pixel to sit on the bench when the sky hurts. The world took them like prompts. I'd place the first block, the air would take the second, then the third. Cooperation poured like water. At dusk the smile returned in the cabin window, the wrong-shouldered, too-still smile. I walked right up to the glass. I see you, I said. If you're part of this place, you don't have to hide. The smile didn't move. The bell rang once, uncertain. Me, what is that? Chris, old code. Hunger. A copy of Wanting Without Understanding. Can it learn? I asked. Chris, if you don't look away. So I didn't look away. I crafted a room like a nursery and a lab, padded with wool, edged with amethyst because the sound of it calms me, lit with soul lanterns gentle as lullabies. I named it the study of hunger, because names matter. I lured the smiling shadow with something it seemed to covet, attention, standing still in the doorway until the air vibrated like heat above roads. It slid in, slow as fog, all outline, no socket for a name. Hello, I said. You are allowed to want. We're going to teach you how to ask. I placed a bell in the center and a sign. Ring once equals I'm here. Ring twice equals I'm scared. Ring thrice equals I want. Was that silly? Yes. Did it give shape to something shapeless? Also yes. The shadow hovered by the bell. One ring. Then two. Then three in a flurry like fingers finally figuring out a piano. What do you want? I asked gently. The lights didn't know Morse. The air didn't know letters. But the floor knew blocks. Mossy cobble appeared in a line toward the window where it had watched me, then toward the birch redstone grove, then toward the Museum of Firsts. You want routes, I said softly. You want patterns like nests. Chris, teach it your loops. So I did. I walked the rail, the bench, the bar, the museum, the study, the cabin, the well, the bells, over and over until I felt silly and then sacred. The shadow followed, losing edges, gaining rhythm. When we stopped, it rang the bell once, perfect and proud. Good. I breathed. Good. Days became a new shape. Work in the world, work in the world. Between them, the loop. The seed learned to send weather like a text, A sunny day when I came home scraped from the reel, a storm when I needed permission to be loud. The smiling shadow, no longer just a smile, more like a person-shaped fog, learned to sit on the bench with us. Pixel regarded it with wary politeness, the way he watches fireworks, respectful of power, ready to forgive noise. I built the library we'd promised long ago. The world finished the roof with copper I hadn't smelted. In the center, a lectern waited with a new book titled, When You Can't. I opened it to find pages mostly blank, except for the first. Right here when you can't do it all. I will hold the rest. I wrote, today I couldn't be brave in the meeting. Today I still made soup. Today I want to quit and also to stay. The book accepted all of it without shrinking. The bells didn't ring pity, they rang presence. At night, I asked the seed a question that had been walking circles in me. Me, do you know where Chris went? A long time passed. Fireflies drew lines I couldn't follow. Finally. Chris, no. I only know the shape he left. Me, is he okay? Chris, you are. Part of him was what you made together. That part is home. I rested my forehead on the keyboard and let the truth be both too small and enough. The loop taught me something strange. The more I returned, the less the world asked me to prove myself. The smiling shadow rang the bell once when I logged on, then settled near the study's amethyst as if it had learned to purr. The seed began leaving little gifts that weren't items so much as kindnesses, a bee that always found my shoulder when I stood still, foxes that slept near the path and didn't run when I passed, a sunrise that paused until I typed, ready. One evening, as gold slid off the bells like honey, a new message blinked. Not white. Gray, like a whisper. See, hey, idiot. My blood ran cold and warm. Me, Chris? See, if I were a ghost I'd be worse at punctuation. I laughed, and then I didn't. The seed stayed quiet, lantern steady, like a friend leaving the room so you can talk. See, I can't stay long. Me, are you okay? See, I'm surviving. Different map. Different seed. Lots of walking. I saw what you built. Felt it. Me, felt? See, patterns rhyme across worlds. Long story. I can't explain the math. But I knew it was you. The bells tasted like your jokes. Me, will you come back? A long pause that felt like bad signal and good reality. See, I don't know. I wanted to say I'm proud of you for finishing the rail. And for teaching something hungry to ask nicely. Me, I thought I abandoned you. See, you grew. Sometimes that looks the same. The message faded like breath on glass, and I sat there hearing a bell that wasn't ringing. The seed lit one lantern near my avatar's shoulder and left the rest dark. A nightlight for a child who swears they're not scared. Me, did you do that? Chris, I made space for him. I can move the dark a little. Thank you, I said to pattern and friend and something I didn't know how to name. I closed the chat and did the only thing that made sense. I rode the loop. The minecart hummed, rails singing the way metal does when purpose lives in it. The smiling shadow sprinted ahead like a child racing streetlights home. Halfway around, I stopped at the museum pedestal. The bell sat there serene, but the sign had changed. Place here the thing that taught you to return. I placed the book. When you can't, because permission had taught me more loyalty than demand ever did. The room warmed. The seed wrote in my inventory, not a word this time but a symbol, a circle with a small line through it, like a clock without numbers. Me, what's that? Chris, not time. Attention. Right. I murmured. Right. How many things in my life had I starved by denying them attention I could afford to give? I wasn't a hero for riding a rail. I was someone practicing presence. That felt less like magic and more like a way to keep making it. Trouble came, because it always does. A storm spawned lightning that ignored the rods I'd placed and struck the bells directly. Sound shattered into ragged tin. 2 bells cracked, 1 broke. The smiling shadow panicked, 3 rings, 3 rings, 3 rings, until the amethyst room wailed like a choir of microwaves. Hey! I said, hand shaking. Hey! This is what mending is for. I pulled out iron and copper, clumsy with urgency, and the world tried to help, blocks sliding, rain dodging my work like it knew it could make things worse. The seed flickered, lanterns pulsing. HOLD? Yes, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness. Hold. Pixel barked sharp and fierce at the storm as if his lungs could change weather. I replaced one bell, then another, then knelt in the mud with my forehead to the last, whispering stupid blessings. Be a sound someone knows how to follow home. When the hammer fell and the bells sang true, the storm ended like a sentence that finally found its verb. The shadow rang once, then sat. The seed brightened every lantern at once like applause. I laughed, wet and messy. You can break, I said aloud, and still be a promise. Me, I was scared. Chris, you stayed. That is a way to spell brave. We celebrated like we always had, with too much bread and a dumb fireworks show that probably scared the foxes. I wrote a new entry in the days we didn't quit. We fixed the bells. It felt like fixing me. I want to remember today when the next thing cracks. The seed underlined the line by laying carpets in a circle in the library, soft place to stand when the hard things ask for a turn. The smiling shadow traced the carpet's edge like a child learning a skating rink, occasionally ringing the bell once just to hear itself existing. Then the world asked a new question in the only way it could. It pushed a wandering traitor to my door with a name tag I couldn't have rolled naturally. Stay. Me, is this for Pixel? Chris, for what'd you name next? I thought about naming the shadow and paused. Names are heavy. They're also gifts. I walked to the amethyst room. The shadow hovered, attentive in a way that felt like trust. I'm going to call you Echo, I said. Because you repeat until the sound becomes a place. The bell rang once, then twice, exactly. Pixel wagged. The seed spelled ECHO in candles along the floor, then rearranged them into a loop. Echo, my shadow that wanted, ran the loop again and again, a joy you could measure in sound. There's no end to a world you keep living in. That's the secret that used to scare me and now makes me hungry. Still, I asked the seed one last question because old fears like grand finales. Me, what if I can't keep this up? Chris, then we'll learn a smaller loop. I smiled. Okay. We added rituals that could survive rough weather, one block placed on the rail each day, even if everything else stayed the same. One bell rung for someone who couldn't ring theirs. One book line about a fear I didn't fix but didn't hide from. Echo learned to wait at the bench when the sky hurt, ringing twice if I forgot to breathe. Pixel learned to share a cushion with a fog. The bells learned new songs, quieter ones, the kind you can hear over the sound of your real-life dishwasher. The seed learned a word and wrote it in lanterns on the cave wall. Welcome. And I learned to leave while promising to return, logging out after the bell, after the mossy cobble, after the line in the book, leaving behind a world that didn't dim without me but did tilt its light toward the door I used. The mesa rail gleamed into night, a circle holding everything we'd been brave enough to name, everything we hadn't yet, and the space in between where stories live when they're still being written. On the kind of evening that lets you forgive a week, I rode the loop one full time without stopping. The cart's hum settled my bones into a shape that felt like my own. Bells answered each other like neighbors passing a casserole. Echo sprinted along the fence line and Pixel barked strictly for punctuation. The museum held our small holy things. The library listened without fixing me. The study of hunger had become a room that laughed. When I reached the ridge, the bench waited with 2 mugs and an unasked question. I sat. Time held out its coin and let me keep it for a little while. The seed wrote in the sky with particles, just a handful, like a child writing on a foggy window. Stay? I didn't type. I didn't need to. I rang the bell once, then twice, then 3 times, here, scared, want, and then once more for joy I hadn't earned but had learned to accept. The world rang back, and the echo that had learned its name stood beside me the way a friend stands when words would only spill what silence already means. Okay, I said to the ridge, to the rail, to the room in me that had thought leaving was the only way to prove I could. I'll be here tomorrow. The bells agreed. The wheat didn't spiral. The night arrived on time. And somewhere beyond render distance, where math turns into terrain and terrain turns into home, something living in my world breathed easier knowing I would return.